Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Leslie, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of El Dorado County. Thank you for being here today. We welcome you to our candidates forum to talk to Superior Court judge candidates for Court 7. In case many of you don't know, the League of Women Voters was started in 1920 after women won the right to vote. For many years now, of course, we do allow men to join. We are strong supporters of the election process and encourage citizens to exercise their constitutional right to vote. The League wants to encourage everyone here to vote and also ask your friends and family to do the same. You can register to vote online at registertovote.ca.gov. And beginning on May 9th, every registered voter in California will receive a vote-by-mail ballot in their mailbox. The League would like to thank our many volunteers that are here today, and especially our sponsors, including AAUW and the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce. We would also like to thank our candidates for coming tonight and their willingness to participate. We are all working together as volunteers to produce this candidates forum so voters can become better acquainted with the candidates and hear from them themselves. The questions for the candidates that you will be hearing tonight are questions we've received from the public. They have not been made available to any of the candidates before this evening. We hope the candidates will find these questions to be challenging, enabling you, the voters, to make informed decisions about each of the candidates. If you have additional questions during the course of this forum, please use the index cards provided in the back, and you may raise your hand and a League member will come collect that question from you and bring it up to our moderator. A few rules for tonight's candidates forum. All participants must adhere to the terms of civil discourse, including some rules about speaking. Your opening statement is 2 minutes. The answers to your questions are 2 minutes, and you'll have 3 minutes for a closing statement. Finally, I would like to introduce our moderator for this evening's forum, the president of the El Dorado County League of Women Voters, Eileen Burke-Trent. Eileen has been a member of the League for over 25 years. She is new to the area, coming here from Butte County, but has vast experience, including being nationally recognized as the Ruth Schur Fellow for many years. She also has experience running businesses of her own and being a nonprofit executive as well. So I'd like to turn this over to Eileen.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth doesn't toot her own horn, but she is with the State League. We're so fortunate to have her in El Dorado County. She is the media and basically wears many, many hats in the State League. And we are so proud to have her and grateful to have her here. And thank you for that introduction, Elizabeth. Our forum procedures are strict and fair and come from over 100 years of our fair practice and integrity in the political process. We demand open and respectful treatment of the candidates and of our observers. Each candidate, as Elizabeth said, will have 2 minutes in introduction, 2 minutes to answer questions, and 3 minutes to close. Please don't be offended if we don't get to all your questions tonight. We are limited on time, and we try to group similar questions together. So I would like to welcome our candidates for the judge's position. And would you like to call it? Let's let ladies call it, shall we? League of Women Voters, you know.
I'll call it heads.
Heads. Tails. Gary goes first.
All
Gary,
right.
your introduction, please.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I first want to thank the League of Women. Oh, thank you.
And be close.
All right. Good evening. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I first want to thank the League of Women Voters, the El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce, and the American Association of University Women Foothills of El Dorado County for putting on this event. I also want to thank my competitor in this race, Leslie Gomes-Barlow, for sharing the stage with me. I know we both have, share a long-term commitment to El Dorado County and a desire to do all we can for its residents. I also want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. It's been my privilege to work the entirety of my legal career in the public interest. That started back when I was a student at Harvard Law School working at the Legal Aid Bureau, where I represented litigants who could not afford an attorney of their own, and continued when I worked at the South Lake Tahoe, formerly the South Lake Tahoe Women's Center, now Live Violence Free, representing survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I then worked as a family law facilitator and self-help attorney for the El Dorado Superior Court in Placerville, right down the street on Main Street. And in all these roles and in others, it's been my goal to expand access to justice and to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background, regardless of their finances, are treated equally in a court of law. In my current role as the Superior Court Commissioner for the county, I've had the most opportunity to make a direct impact on litigants and to increase and expand access to justice. It's my view as a full-time judicial officer that judges need to not only make good decisions in court, but they need to make the decisions in ways that encourage people to be kinder, more respectful, and more civil to one another, while still ensuring that all citizens are held accountable to the law and that everyone's constitutional rights are guaranteed. I believe that judges can play a powerful role in building community, and that's the way I serve as a commissioner and how I would serve as your Superior Court judge if elected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that mic on? Nope. There
Is
we
your
go.
mic on?
There we go.
Leslie
On.
Gomes Barlow.
Well, good evening. I, like my opponent, would like to thank everyone who was involved in setting up this amazing forum. I think it's something truly special. I'm just in awe, really. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. So thank you to the League of Women Voters, to the American Association of University Women, the El Dorado County Chamber. I think this is a wonderful thing for our community that we've been able to come out together for this forum. That being said, it's a little bit intimidating, but it's awesome being a candidate here today. So I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm here. It was not an easy decision to enter this race. We're here for an election to an open judicial seat in our county, and it's the first time we've had an open judicial seat for election in about 8 years. And this is really an important opportunity for our community because that means the voters get to choose our next judge. And I want to be clear, I am not here because I don't think my opponent is qualified. It's obvious that he is qualified for this position. I believe it's important for the voters to have a choice. And if I was not in this race, then my opponent might be unopposed, and we wouldn't have this exciting process that we have here today with this forum. So about my background, I have been practicing law for over 20 years. I've practiced in a lot of different areas. I have experienced private litigation practice, transactional practice, working on contracts, as well as civil service. And that's where I really found my calling as a deputy county counsel for El Dorado County and also Amador County. I have lived in this county for 15 years. I've raised my children here in Placerville. They attend public schools here in Placerville. I'm in this race because I care about my community, and as my opponent indicated, there's an important role a judge has to play here, and I hope that I can see the needs of my community and bring people together so that we can make our community stronger. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you both so very much. We got some fabulous questions. Fabulous. They are amazing, and I will ask the first one. Let's see. You go first, Leslie. Okay, ready?
Okay.
This is interesting. In the area of hate crimes, how would you balance free speech rights with the need to guard against hate speech and other offensive activity?
Well, I think that's a good question, and it involves an important balance. Free speech is something that's very important to our way of life. It's one of the things that makes our country amazing. It's protected by the Constitution, and it's something that is not limited or should not be limited unless there is a substantial justification for doing so. And in the instance of hate crimes, I believe that the law would determine in what situation activity would be defined as a hate crime, right? And the legislature is supposed to consider appropriately the justification for intruding on free speech when defining what is a hate crime or what should be punished as a hate crime. I think the reason we have those laws is so that we can preserve the peace. And as a general rule, free speech, I believe, should be unlimited, but it's something that it can't be, it can cross a line. And that's something that disturbs our peace. It crosses a line when it's something that becomes harmful, threatening, and there's law that clearly defines the parameters when something may be defined as a hate crime. So I would say I would follow the law and recognize what elements may be required for that.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I have it, but thank you.
Okay.
So I agree a lot with what my opponent has said. Of course, there's a balancing act between the First Amendment and making sure that the community is safe and that the community doesn't feel terrorized. The First Amendment, of course, it's a constitutional right, and all constitutional rights are guaranteed to all citizens, but there are limits. With the First Amendment specifically, you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater, and that's a well-established principle. So you have to make sure that you're balancing those limitations in making sure the community is safe. When I think about the First Amendment and limitations, I think about the calendar I do on Thursdays. So I handle restraining orders every Thursday morning. So I deal with civil harassment restraining orders and domestic violence restraining orders. And sometimes I'm posed with the question of, do I want to limit somebody's ability to exercise their First Amendment rights in order to protect the health and well-being of another individual? And there are circumstances where that's warranted, where somebody's crossed the line and you need to keep somebody from harassing or annoying or doing something that puts their liberty interest and their property interest at risk. And that's kind of the same way I view hate crimes. You have to follow the law. You have to make sure you balance those interests appropriately. But again, as I've said, nothing is absolute, but you still need to make sure you're respecting First Amendment rights in balancing those interests.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, Mr. Schlossberg, you're first on this one. Should you become aware of an attorney's unethical behavior in a case over which you are presiding, what would you do?
That would never happen in a court of law. So this does happen from time to time, and as a judicial officer, one of the requirements is you take what's called the new judge orientation within 6 months of your assignment. And during that portion, you learn about judicial ethics and your requirements. So when it comes to misconduct, there are generally, I would take 3 courses of action. The first is you need to try to take corrective action with the attorney. Assuming the attorney has crossed that ethical line. That's that first step. Thereafter, if that corrective action doesn't work, or if the conduct is so egregious, you may need to report the individual to the bar to ensure that the bar that oversees the legal profession has a chance to take action if necessary. The third thing I'll say is I believe in mentorship, and I'm fortunate to have very good colleagues, very good judicial officers, particularly Presiding Judge Ashworth is a good mentor that I can turn to help to determine that balance and determine when it's appropriate to take either course of action. So that's the general course of action I would take and how I would approach those sorts of situations.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I understand
Pretty
it.
straightforward.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. And I concur with Commissioner Schlossberg's comments. I think that unethical behavior is something that simply cannot be tolerated in the courtroom, because what it does is it diminishes the integrity of the proceeding. It means that the parties are being affected. It could affect the fairness of the proceeding, their opportunity to actually have their voice heard. It's very disruptive. I'm not thinking of a specific example. Maybe I am, but I think it can't be tolerated. And I like what Commissioner Schlossberg says. There's an approach you can take with someone, and it can be a delicate matter, but it's very important that it be addressed swiftly and strictly, and it be clear that it's not going to be tolerated.
Thank you. Ms. Gomes-Barlow, this is for you. Are there any types of cases where you might feel the need to recuse yourself?
A case type? I can't think of a case type where I would feel the need to recuse myself. I know that there are a lot of cases, types of cases, that are very difficult. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I could handle it. So a judge recusing themselves from a case is a very serious matter. I don't imagine it ever being, the grounds would ever be the case type. You may have circumstances where you may need to disqualify yourself due to an appearance of if you know somebody, one of the parties, and you know them too closely, or you know other information about the case. But I think it's really important for a judicial candidate to be prepared to be in a difficult situation and to know how to respond appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear? All right? Everything coming through clearly? Good, thank you very much. Mr. Schlossberg?
No, there's no case type that I would recuse myself from.
Okay. Let's move. We're just shooting through this
Figured
tonight.
I'd save you some time.
All right. Mr. Schlossberg, please describe your personal experience of dealing with people who are different from you socially, economically, and politically.
Thank you. I've been fortunate to have many experiences dealing with those who are different from me. As I alluded to in my opening, I previously worked at Live Violence Free up in South Lake Tahoe as a legal service attorney. Before that, I started my legal career in Los Angeles, also working as a legal services attorney. So I didn't come from a wealthy family, but I certainly didn't come from a family where we worried where our next meal would come from. And the clients I served in those roles, they did have that experience. They had issues with affording their rent month to month, making sure they could feed their children. So that certainly was an experience of dealing with people who had a different upbringing than I had. And I had to build bridges and build connections with them. I also have dealt with a lot of individuals, clients who are monolingual Spanish speaking. So as far as dealing with diversity, dealing with people who have a different cultural background, that's not new to me. I've been able to make those connections. Additionally, in my role now as a judicial officer, I deal with everyone across the county, and I think one of the earlier candidates for the assessor race talked about the diversity in our county and how sometimes that can lead to contention. So I've dealt with people who are all across the political spectrum. So dealing with difference is something I'm used to, I'm comfortable with, and it's something that I welcome the challenge as if elected as Superior Court judge.
Thank you. Ms. Gomes-Barlow. Yes.
So I think it's really important to embrace differences. I think it's important to be exposed to people who are different than you, to have opportunities to work with people who are different than you. And in my own experience, I have had those opportunities. I think it's important to be very respectful, obviously. The thing that came to mind, because I think the question was a specific experience, I did spend some time 2 summers down in Tijuana, Mexico, where I was serving with a local church on a mission. And I will tell you, that is something that if you haven't done it before, it is such an incredible experience, because you are faced directly with what it is like for someone else in another country that doesn't have the same resources that you have. They're put in very difficult circumstances. The situation I was involved in involved families living in an area they called the Canyon, where they would basically make their homes out of garbage, because that was the one place where they could freely exist without government intrusion. That's where they could have their property. There were language barriers. Obviously incredible economic differences. What I did in that situation is I just wanted to pray with those people, care about those people, understand their circumstances, understand their life. I think that's something that is really important in order to make you a well-rounded person, so that you can respect any individual that comes before you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gomes-Barlow, your turn again. Okay, with the advent of true filing, what is your view on integrating electronic filing in the El Dorado Superior Court?
So I would be really excited about that idea. I love electronic filing. Right out of law school, I I had a clerkship with a federal judge in the United States District Court of the Eastern District of California. That's in Sacramento. One of the coolest things about that job was their electronic management system. I could pull up any case, any document within the case. It was fantastic, and it makes it very accessible for judicial officers, for anyone and their staff. I think that's wonderful. And on the outside, for the public, I think electronic filing would be a very useful service because I believe my opponent mentioned, access to the legal system. A big challenge often for people is having the right documents, having a way to print those documents, being able to get to the courthouse to file those documents. So I would be very much in favor of an electronic filing system. Now I know from experience with some courts that there are glitches that occur in that. And so it does take some patience to try to iron those things out, but I think if we can be patient about that, it could be a very valuable system.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schlossberg.
Sure. So electronic filing, it's been, well, let me start by saying we currently have what's called eCourt in our system here in El Dorado County. So we're in the process of transitioning from paper files to all entirely electronic system. And I know Ms. Gomes-Barlow talked about glitches, and she's right. The glitches are abound. There are several as we are trying to adjust to that system. So in concept, e-filing is great. It increases efficiencies. If done right, it can increase transparency. There are some counties where you can view your file online, which is incredible because you don't have to go down to the county, to the courthouse to view your file. And particularly in a county as large as El Dorado County, where there's very remote areas, that access issue is real. And being able to see what's happening in your case without actually having to take the time to drive the 30, 40 minutes down to the courthouse. I just want to highlight, though, it has to be done delicately because transitioning to e-filing, transitioning to an entirely electronic system does not come without its setbacks. I mean, it's clear the writing's on the wall. This is the direction of the state as a whole. But it's important to make sure you consider things like how do litigants who aren't comfortable with computers, for instance, how do they adjust to that system? Because some people, they're not even comfortable with the email. So you need to make sure that those access issues are addressed. But generally though, moving towards e-filing, moving towards more access, more transparency, overall is going to be a good thing for running a court system.
Thank you. This is interesting. Mr. Schlossberg, you go first on this one. What led you to choose the law as a career? What is the greatest lesson it has taught you? That's a good question.
So there's two questions, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Well, I'm going back to high school, and I was always interested in psychology and interested in helping kids. And I also have always had a very analytical mind. I got that from my father. And when I was in college, I decided that dealing with law affecting kids was where I would find my passion. So I started off as a family law attorney for that very reason. I wanted to help out children in crisis, plain and simply. And it's nice that my career, the way it's developed, I'm now dealing with the juvenile dependency and delinquency system, so I get to assist kids who are in crisis. But that's why I wanted to turn to law. It just seemed to match my interest, it matched my passion. Can you tell me what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, what's the greatest lesson it has taught you?
It's easier to see what is in concept is not the same as what it's going to be in practice. Before I got into this, I wanted to help out survivors of domestic violence, and you learn that when you represent clients, they've been dealt a tough deck, but they also have their own issues. Clients it's not black and white; things are gray. So I think what I've learned is the world is a lot more complex than it might seem before you're actually in the role you want to be in.
Thank you very much. Would you like me to ask the question again, 2 parts?
I think I understand that.
Okay.
I think I remember it. It's a good question. And
It is a good question.
It's not something I've thought of in a while, but I kind of fell into the law sort of inadvertently. It was not my plan when I was in college. Actually, thought I was going to be a doctor, but organic chemistry and I did not get along. So I realized I'm not good at science. What else can I do? At the same time, I was excelling in courses that would lend itself to liberal arts studies and law school. So I love being a student. I wanted to continue learning. I decided to go to law school, and I still wasn't entirely sure what I would be doing, but I had an opportunity to have an internship with a really substantial law firm in Silicon Valley, learned a lot there. Ultimately, when I found my way to civil service with the county, I fell in love with child welfare. And that's when the light went on for me and I realized this is why I'm a lawyer. It was an incredible experience. It was not something that I realized was available to me as a lawyer when I was back in law school. So kind of like Commissioner Schlossberg noted, you learn things you don't know as you're entering the field. You learn about procedures and frameworks and laws that exist. It was fascinating to me, and being in the courtroom is something I just fell in love with, procedure and evidence. And I would say one of the lessons I've learned maybe comes from procedure and evidence, particularly evidence. You can't make assumptions about things. You can't assume that you know something. You always have to be asking the right questions. You have to be thorough in your inquiries, and that teaches you how to be patient and how to be diligent. And I'm very happy to be where I am today. I'm thankful for the path that led me here.
So, what is the greatest lesson it has taught you? You pretty much addressed that in the second half. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you both for those answers. You both have experience in the El Dorado County Superior Court. In your view, what are some of the court's deficiencies that impact the administration of justice? How would you address those as a judicial officer of the court?
Well, I think this goes to me,
first.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be so bold as to start speaking about administrative changes that should be made to our court. I have not practiced in the El Dorado County courts in a bit, and I know things are always evolving and developing. I know there are always challenges to efficiency. I know particularly in our county we've had a lot of judicial vacancies. That's something that is not something, our court can't control that. That happens. But that means we have a lack of judicial officers, or we have a frequent transition in visiting judges, and that's a difficult thing. I would be really interested in learning where the challenges are. I heard Commissioner Schlossberg mention some challenges with our e-filing system. That's something that can improve efficiency if it works properly. I would be open to learning and about changes that may be proposed. People have good ideas. I'd be very interested in helping to implement any change that would improve the way our system operates.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg.
Thank you. So again, the hiccups in trying to implement e-filing, that's certainly an area of constant growth and development for the court. And I guess I want to be fair. I think staff has done an incredible job of transitioning, but transition comes with bumps along the road, so that's certainly an area to work on. I think the main issue, I think Ms. Gomes-Barlow touched on it, is staffing. She mentioned judicial officer vacancies. That's a big deal. Another aspect of that is the staff themselves. Right now, we have several clerk vacancies. And what that also means is when we hire new clerks, they're clerks who haven't been in the court system very long. So we have a lot of first-year clerks, brand new people to our court system who have to learn in short order how to do the job. And because staff is because it's stretched so thin, it's difficult to get the training that everyone needs to be up to full speed. So, I love my colleagues, I love my coworkers, they do great work, I commend them all the time, but that is certainly a challenge because you're asking one person to do essentially the job of 2 or 3 people. So that's certainly an issue to work with. Another big problem or a deficiency, an area of growth, is infrastructure. For those of you who've been to the Main Street Courthouse, I'm sure it's a beautiful building. I love the Main Street Courthouse, but I also would love it if we could get a new courthouse. And we've been trying to get a new courthouse for, it must be at least 20 years now. So that's certainly a deficiency in our county. It'd be nice, instead of having courthouses spread throughout the county, having things a bit more consolidated. Sometimes you have a defendant in a traffic case going to the wrong department. and then they have a case decided without them being present. So those are the biggest areas I see that we need to work on as a court, and I would love to be a part of that process as your next judge.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg, the local library is expanding its hours and plans to expand its space. Can you share your perspective on the value of the library to local litigants?
Well, I don't know how long you have, because I mean the library is tremendous. It's such a valuable resource. When I was the family law facilitator, I had the privilege of every Thursday I would go to the library to do a presentation on how to file for divorce. So I was there all the time. I got to see the resources, got to work with the law librarian, and it's such a valuable place for people to be able to go to learn about the law on their own. The truth of the matter is, Michael Friel, he's our current facilitator. He's amazing, but he has limits because of there's only so much time in the day to do what he can do. And having the law library there as an additional place for self-help assistance, it's such a great asset to our community. And in particular, because there's all the NOLO press guides where you can learn about all the different areas of the law, it's just a good place to go to make sure self-represented litigants can feel like they have a sense of what's going on in their case without needing to hire an attorney. And I'll say another good aspect of it is the law library. In addition to the county libraries, I'm working on a project to try to have hubs at the different county libraries to increase access so people remotely can appear for proceedings or seek assistance from the family law facilitator. So those collaborations between the law library, county libraries, just throughout the county as a whole, it's just so valuable and increases that access to justice, which is so important.
Ms. Gomes-Barlow.
Ditto what he said. Wonderful, yes. Libraries are amazing. They're a very important part of our community. I've been a member of the Law Library Board of Trustees for a bit, for a while. I was delegated first by Judge Femister and then Judge Mullikian. It is an important service, and the conversations we are often having as a board is how we can expand those services. And Commissioner Schlossberg mentioned that the importance of the facilitator, the clinics, the teaching that can happen, and then the one-on-one, if someone needs assistance. And those services are so important, and it is a struggle right now to be able to provide that. And that's something that I know that the Law Library wants to expand, including their hours, which are going to include Saturdays. And I'm probably going to get a slap on the hand from the law librarian for not announcing what those hours are. I should know what they are. But I think that's going to be a wonderful benefit for our community. And then, as Commissioner Schlossberg mentioned, the resources that are available there. These are resources that even many law firms can't possess. They're expensive resources. They require a lot of maintenance, a lot of updating. We have a dedicated full-time librarian who is just wonderful in her service and her knowledge. And I think it's a great resource for the people in our community and outside our community who need to access our courts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask a rather long question, and it's probably a fairly complex question, and it might require some complex answers. Are you ready?
Maybe.
Okay. Penal Code 11411A prohibits the display of a noose at a place of employment by any person associated with that place of employment for the purpose of terrorizing, I gotta get that second page here, this is a long one, terrorizing person attends or works at that place of employment. The Placerville City Council and the police chief acknowledged last December that people fear for their safety because of that symbol at a Placerville place of employment. The statute defines terrorize as to cause fear for personal safety. Under those circumstances, how would you approach a case under that statute? And Leslie Gomes-Barlow, take it away.
Well, that is a complicated, complex question, and I don't know how best to attack it other than to say it's clearly going to be a very fact-specific determination. And I would have to be paying careful attention to the facts that are being presented. I heard you mention in the definition that it needs to be, something that is terrorizing to an individual or a specific person. So those would be really important facts to know in that particular case. But I really can't speak in generalities regarding a case like that, because without the facts, without knowing what's before you, I think that would be difficult. But I would approach it by certainly making sure that we receive the information that we need in order to make the proper determination. I don't know the nature of the proceeding that would be involved, but I think it's, like I said, a complex matter. It requires understanding of the law. It requires factual evidence and a procedure that allows for those facts to be presented appropriately.
Thank you. Mr. Schlossberg.
Can you just the
Sure.
last 2 segments? I need to listen carefully.
I don't even know where the last 2 segments
Well, I
are.
think you mentioned you talked
Okay,
about.
let me start here.
Okay.
Okay. Let me just read the whole thing over again.
Well, the part where you said terrorism and,
Yeah,
and that
right.
that's from there. That's where
With that place of employment, for the purpose of terrorizing any person who attends or works at that place of employment. The Placerville City Council and the police chief acknowledged last December that people fear for their safety because of that symbol at a Placerville place of employment. The statute defines terrorize as to cause fear for personal safety. Under those circumstances, how would you approach a case under the statute?
So let me start by saying Canon 5B of the Code of Judicial Ethics prohibits judicial officers or candidates from speaking or from giving a public statement on an issue that might come before them. So I can't say how I would handle the issue. I just and that's not a dodge. I'm just ethically prohibited from doing that. But I think like Ms. Gomes-Barlow, I can speak in generalities about how I would approach cases, and I would agree that you have to look at the facts, you have to look at the law and interpret the law. I apply the law as written, and of course, I have to apply the facts to that and decide where to go from there. But I can't really speak more on it other than that. But I do understand it's a contentious issue. I was here in court when there was quite a big protest out in front of the courthouse. So I understand these issues are real and important to a lot of people. I would treat it on the individual circumstances if it were to come before me.
Thank you both very much. That was not a simple question. No.
Thanks for giving it to me first.
Yeah, well. This will be the final question before your summation.
Sure.
I guess we use summation in the court of law, don't we? Yeah, okay. I've watched enough Perry Mason. Since a judge's job is to uphold the law, how would you differentiate yourself from your opponent? Mr. Schlossberg. Ouch.
It's been so civil, so friendly. I guess I need to start by saying I'm very fortunate to have an opponent who, there have been some contentious judicial elections in the past in this county, and I see several of you nodding your head. You know what I'm talking about. And this election, there's been none of that as far as I can tell, and I think that's a testament to the fact that we both understand the office for which we seek. It requires a level of integrity, a level of civility that's appropriate, for judicial office and judicial service. So, but I think the difference between the two of us, I think we have different levels of experience. We both have, I think, a good experience to offer for judicial office. I'll just speak to my experience and why I think it's good to put in front of the voters. As a court commissioner, I do the job essentially of a judge right now. Court commissioners and Superior Court judges, there's not too many differences. The only difference is a party can come into court and say they don't want to stipulate to me hearing their case. Whereas for a judge, it's a bit more difficult to kick a judge off your case. But once they stipulate to me hearing their case, I make orders as does a regular Superior Court judge. And I've made orders in every type of case in this county, aside from maybe one or two. So my breadth of experience, my depth of experience, I think it offers a compelling case in this particular election. And I've been doing that for the past year and a half. So there's no learning curve. I'm ready to go on day one. The truth of the matter is, if I get elected, my life's not going to change a whole lot. I'm going to still go to the court every day and still administer justice as best I can for the residents of El Dorado County. So that's what I offer, and I hope that's compelling for all of you as well.
Great, thank you.
I think I would like you to repeat the question this
Yes,
time.
I
So I think
will.
I've heard something in
I'm
there
happy
important.
to. Since a judge's job is to uphold the law, how would you differentiate yourself from your opponent?
As Commissioner Schlossberg said, I do believe we have differences. It's hard to put that in the context of because a judge has to uphold the law, because I think we would both do that, and hopefully that obviously that's why we're candidates for judge. But I think that for myself, what's really, really important to me is the rule of law. That is something that protects our freedom. And as a judicial candidate, you take an oath to support and defend our Constitution of the United States. And we also have our state constitution that embodies those same rights. I have a very deep reverence for that rule of law. And in approaching that, I'm going to be very, very restrained and make sure that I protect that law because it's important to our freedom. And as Commissioner Schlossberg indicated, I think it's important that we operate ourselves with honor and integrity. The parties need to be respected. And we respect each other, clearly. As he indicated, this is a different kind of race than maybe prior judicial races, and it's a pleasure. But differentiating myself from Commissioner Schlossberg would be my practice experience, because I have been practicing law for over 20 years, and over a decade of that has been primarily a courtroom practice as an advocate. And as a practitioner, and I've learned a lot in doing that. I've learned what works, I've learned what doesn't work, and I have been in front of so many judges. I've learned from them, and that's something that I think will help me be a good judge. I know the disposition that is important for a judge. I know what's effective in handling the litigants and making sure they feel heard and that you have a fair hearing. And I would humbly seek your consideration for this office. And I hope you all feel after today that you have two good candidates to choose from.
Thank you so much. So we'll do the 3-minute summation now, which Ms. Gomez-Barlow, you get to go first.
The summation.
The summation.
I hope you've learned a little bit about both of us here tonight. I think this forum is really special, and as I indicated in my opening, I think it's wonderful that we have an election this year for an open judicial seat. An open seat is one with no incumbent. In the last 4 years, I believe we've had 4 appointments of judges. We have strong judges in our county, but often our judges come by appointment through the governor's office, and that's what makes this year so special. Because when a judge is appointed, they typically run unopposed. And their terms are 6 years long, but at the end of their term, they're often on the ballot alone, or maybe not even on the ballot in some instances. This year, you get to choose, and I humbly seek your consideration. I would ask you to check out my website, learn more about me. I'm a mom. I have 3 teenagers, 1 in college, 2 boys at home. They keep me pretty busy. I care very deeply about my community that I have lived in for 15 years. This is where I've chosen to raise my family. And I'm seeking this position because I believe I have something to contribute as a judicial officer. And it's clear our authority as a judge is going to be limited. But there are differences we can make in our community, and I think it's important for a judge to be an active member in the community so that we can help identify those needs and bring people together to make our community stronger. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schlossberg.
Thank you. Well, again, I appreciate you all being here tonight. It's great when people come out and show interest in local politics. The local elections are what really matter the most in people's day-to-day life. So I just want to commend you all, and those of you who are viewing or will view on the video, for being engaged in this process. I hope you've had a chance to get a better sense of who I am and the experiences and the attributes that I offer as I seek your vote as your next Superior Court judge. What's become clear to me on the campaign trail is that not a whole lot of people have the best idea of what a Superior Court Commissioner does. I joke with my wife that the main reason I want to be judge is that way it's easier to explain what I do to people, because when she says, my husband's a commissioner, they get a blank stare. My hope is that throughout the course of this evening, I've been able to articulate a bit more what the role of a commissioner is. And just to restate some of that, Superior Court Commissioner's job is not much different than the job of a Superior Court judge. And I've had the opportunity and privilege to serve in that role for the past year and a half. And I've issued restraining orders for victims of violence. I've held litigants in contempt of court for violating court orders. I've made orders for regarding the custody and care of children. As I stated earlier, I've handled nearly every type of court case that our county deals with. Commissioners also are required to take the same training and abide by the same rules of ethics as a judge. And not only do I do that in my current job, but I've trained judicial officers statewide, judges and commissioners, on both ethics and substantive issues in the law. And that included, even earlier today, I did a training as part of the Family Law Institute for judges and commissioners statewide on some emerging family law issues. In reality, so if elected on June 7th, as I said earlier, my job will remain mostly the same. I'm still going to do what I'm doing now, just in an expanded role. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've gotten such good support from judges in the county. So right now I have the endorsement of 35 judicial officers statewide, and that includes every current judge in our county, as well as every retired judge in our county who's made an endorsement in this particular race. And I'm proud of those endorsements because those individuals are all persons who have worked as a judicial officer. They know what it takes to be successful. They know my body of work, and they support me in this race. So I appreciate that. In addition to my experience, I think I have the attributes that lead to good service as a judicial officer. I'm calm, I'm patient, I listen well, I can quickly analyze legal arguments and factual circumstances to make quick decisions, I'm relatable, and I put in the work to consider issues on their merits. So I hope that I can get your support as Superior Court Judge. Thank you all very much.
So once again, I would like to thank our candidates profoundly for your service and your activity. Thank you all. Good night.